My name is Tessa Bradford. I'm 32 years old. And I didn't know my entire life could tilt off its axis because my boyfriend walked back into our apartment with a weekend bag and a face that looked rehearsed. Not guilty in the dramatic way. No shaking hands. No tears right away. Just this strange, quiet tightness. Like he'd practiced being calm so many times that calm had started to crack. Ryan Mercer and I had been together for 4 years. 4 years is long enough to have routines that feel like joints in your body. Natural, assumed, impossible to imagine losing until the moment they're gone. He'd left Thursday morning for what he called a guy's weekend in Las Vegas. His best friend's birthday. Big milestone, big celebration, the usual. I dropped him off at the airport, kissed him goodbye, told him to text when he landed. He joked about coming home with a fake tattoo and a hangover that would require medical attention. Normal stuff. The kind of normal that makes you stupid. Saturday afternoon, I was in leggings on the couch, half watching a football game I barely cared about, eating leftover pizza straight from the box because I didn't feel like being a person. That's when the lock clicked. I glanced up, expecting maybe a neighbor or the maintenance guy. Then the door opened and Ryan stepped inside. A full day early. He didn't even say surprise. He just stood there, like the apartment was a stage and he'd forgotten his first line. "Hey," I said, sitting up slowly. "You're back early. Everything okay?" He set his bag down with too much care, like he was afraid a loud sound might make the whole lie collapse. "Yeah," he said. Then, after a beat, "No, not really." My stomach did that quiet drop, like an elevator starting to fall before your brain catches up. Because I knew that tone. It's the tone people use when they're about to hand you something you can't put back. He rubbed his hands together like he was warming them. Avoided my eyes. "So something happened in Vegas," he said. "And I need to tell you before you find out another way." That sentence alone felt like betrayal, because it meant there was a way to find out. I muted the TV without taking my eyes off him. The announcer's voice died mid-sentence, and the apartment suddenly sounded too quiet. Just the refrigerator hum, the distant rush of traffic, my own pulse. "Okay," I said carefully. "Tell me." He swallowed. I got married. For a second, my brain refused to process the words, like it was a language I didn't speak. Then it hit. Married. Not I kissed someone. Not I messed up. Married. I actually laughed. A short, instinctive sound, because it was the only reaction that made sense if he was joking. But he didn't laugh back. His eyes were glossy. His jaw was tight. He looked terrified, not of what he'd done, but of what it would cost him. "Ryan," I said, the laugh fading into something sharp. "What are you talking about?" "Friday night," he blurted. "We were drunk, like really drunk. And Jenna was there." The name landed like a stone. Jenna Carlisle. His ex-girlfriend from college. The one he swore was ancient history. The one he mentioned like she was a closed chapter. A lesson learned. A person he barely thought about anymore. "You ran into Jenna?" I said. He nodded too fast. "It was random. We were at this bar and she was with friends and... Tess, it was stupid, okay? It was one of those Vegas things. Everyone was hyping it up. We went to one of those chapels and you married her," I finished. My voice so calm it scared me. He stepped closer, hands out like he was approaching a startled animal. "But it doesn't mean anything. I was wasted. She was wasted. It was chaos. It's not real." I stared at him. Not real. As if paperwork becomes imaginary when you don't like the consequences. "You're telling me," I said slowly, "that you married your ex-girlfriend while you're still with me." "It was a mistake," he insisted. "A drunk mistake. We can get it annulled. Like immediately. It's Vegas. People do this all the time." My throat tightened, but my voice stayed steady. "That's big," I said. He flinched. "Why are you being like this?" "Like what?" I asked. "Like I'm hearing you?" He raked a hand through his hair. "We're not married, Tess. You and I, we're just dating." Just dating. 4 years. A joint lease. His key on my key ring. Furniture stores visited together. Talk of next month like it was guaranteed. "We've been together 4 years," I said, each word measured. "We have a joint lease, Ryan. You have a key. Half your clothes are in my closet. We were literally furniture shopping last month." He started crying, real tears, hot and frantic. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But I came back to you. Doesn't that mean something?" I looked at him, and something in me went cold. Not cruel, just clear. Because that sentence wasn't love. It was entitlement. I did what I wanted. I came back. Now you're supposed to accept it. I stood up. Ryan followed me like a shadow. "Tess, don't do anything crazy." I walked into the bedroom, closed the door halfway, Not to lock him out, but because I needed 1 second to breathe. Then I picked up my phone, and I dialed 911. Ryan's voice went sharp. "What are you doing?" "Reporting a crime," I said. His face drained of color. "Are you insane?" The dispatcher answered, calm and professional. 911, what's your emergency?" My voice sounded too steady, like it belonged to someone else. "Hi," I said. "My boyfriend just told me he got married to someone else this weekend in Nevada. We are in a committed relationship. He never ended things with me. I believe this is bigamy." Ryan made a strangled sound and lunged for my phone. "Hang up, Tessa! Hang up!" I stepped back, holding the phone away, and my heart hammered so hard it made my ribs ache. The dispatcher hesitated. "Ma'am, can you clarify the situation?" "My boyfriend of 4 years went to Vegas and married another woman," I said. "He's saying it doesn't count because he was drunk. But as far as I know, we're still together. He lives here part-time. We have a joint lease." Ryan's hands were shaking now. "Please," he whispered, "please don't do this." The dispatcher's tone changed, more alert. "Ma'am, bigamy can be a felony. Are you wanting to press charges?" "Yes," I said. "No!" Ryan shouted. He grabbed my wrist, not hard enough to bruise, but hard enough to make his panic physical. "I'll get it annulled today, right now. I'll call the chapel. I'll fix it." "You don't fix a betrayal by calling a chapel," I said, and gave the dispatcher our address. When I ended the call, Ryan collapsed onto the couch like his bones had turned to water. He put his head in his hands and started rocking slightly, breath coming too fast. "You're ruining my life," he choked out, "over a stupid, drunken mistake." I stood in front of him, arms wrapped around myself like I was holding my body together. "You married someone else," I said quietly. "Then you came home like I was still your default setting." 20 minutes later, there was a knock. 2 officers, 1 man, 1 woman. I opened the door, and the air from the hallway felt colder than the apartment, like the building itself was judging us. The female officer looked between us. "You called about a bigamy situation?" "Yes," I said, stepping aside. Ryan sat frozen on the couch, staring at the wall like if he didn't move, none of this would be real. I explained everything, showed them our lease agreement, both our names, showed them texts from the week before about furniture shopping. A screenshot of Ryan saying, "Next month, we finally do it right. No more half living out of a bag." The male officer scrolled through something on his phone while the female officer studied Ryan. "Sir," she asked, "did you get married in Las Vegas on Friday?" Ryan's eyes filled again. He nodded. "And you're currently in a relationship with Ms. Bradford?" she continued. Ryan's voice broke. "Yes, but we're not married." "That isn't what I asked," she said gently, and glanced at me. "Ma'am, do you want to press charges?" "Yes," I repeated. Ryan surged up from the couch. "No, please, Tess, I love you. I love you. This isn't who I am." And right then, like the universe couldn't resist making it worse, Ryan's phone rang. He looked down at the screen, and the color drained out of his face so fast it was almost theatrical. The name on the caller ID was visible even from where I stood. "Jenna." Ryan fumbled, thumb hitting the wrong button. "Speakerphone." A woman's voice filled my living room, bright and breathless, too happy for what this was. "Baby," Jenna said, "I've been calling you. Did you make it home? I miss you already. I still can't believe I married the guy I've been in love with since sophomore year." The officers looked at each other. Ryan slapped at the phone, trying to kill the sound, but the damage was done. The truth had spoken out loud, in my space, in front of witnesses. The female officer's voice was calm, but final. "Sir, you're going to need to come with us." Ryan's knees buckled. He started sobbing in a way that was almost childlike, raw and desperate. "It was a misunderstanding," he gasped. "It was Vegas. It was stupid. Please, please don't." They read him his rights while he shook. And when he tried to bolt, just one frantic step toward the bathroom like he could hide inside a locked door, they caught him, guided him back, and put cuffs on his wrists. In my kitchen, in the home we'd been building like it was safe. As they walked him out, his phone rang again. Jenna again. The male officer picked it up from the couch where Ryan had dropped it. "This is Officer Reynolds," he said into the phone. "Your wife is being arrested for bigamy. Who am I speaking to?" I heard Jenna inhale sharply, then her voice turned sharp with panic. "Arrested? What do you mean arrested? Ryan needs bail. Tell him I can send money." The officer stepped into the hallway, speaking lower, but I still caught pieces. "Felony charge. No, ma'am, you can't speak to him right now." "Yes, ma'am, legally married." Then he came back in and looked at me like he'd just watched a different kind of tragedy. "Ma'am," he said, "there's a woman claiming to be his wife, asking about bail. Do you have contact information for his family?" I did, because for 4 years, I'd been close enough to his life to know the numbers that mattered. I gave them his parents' phone number with fingers that didn't feel like mine. Then they took Ryan away. And the second the door clicked shut behind them, my apartment went so quiet it felt unreal. I stared at the spot on the couch where he'd been sitting 10 minutes earlier, begging, crying, insisting he loved me, like love was supposed to erase legal documents. My phone buzzed. A text from Cara Nguyen, the birthday friend. WTF happened? Ryan just called me crying, saying you called the cops on him. I didn't answer. I sat down slowly, like if I moved too fast, I'd shatter. Because my boyfriend of 4 years had been arrested in my kitchen for marrying his ex-girlfriend in Vegas, and I could already feel the next wave coming. Not from Ryan. From everyone who would insist that my boundaries were cruelty, that my consequences were revenge, that I should have swallowed betrayal and called it love. They hadn't even started calling yet, but I could hear them in my head anyway. And the worst part was this. Ryan hadn't come home guilty. He'd come home confident. Like I'd accept it. Like I'd stay. Like I'd be too afraid to make the truth loud. He was wrong. If you've never heard silence after a disaster, it doesn't sound like peace. It sounds like your own breathing too loud in your chest. Like the refrigerator hum is mocking you. Like the walls are waiting for you to explain yourself. I stood in my living room for a long time, staring at the couch cushion where Ryan had been sitting. Hands shaking, tears falling, still insisting that love should cancel out a marriage license. My hands didn't shake anymore. Not because I was calm. Because my body had switched into something colder. I picked up his half-open weekend bag and set it by the door like an object I didn't recognize. There was a strip of neon wristbands hanging from the zipper, a hotel keycard, a tiny plastic chapel souvenir he must have grabbed without thinking. Evidence. Not of a mistake, of a choice made loud. My phone buzzed again. Cara. Then another message. Then another. Cara. He's saying you're going psycho. What happened? Cara. Tessa, answer me. I didn't. Because the moment I answered, I'd be negotiating with someone who wasn't inside my relationship but still felt entitled to rewrite it. I walked to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. My face was pale. My eyes were dry. That scared me more than tears. 4 years should have left something inside me that cracked. Instead, I felt vacant, like my brain had evacuated my emotions because it knew I'd need the space to survive the next wave. I locked my front door, then checked it again, then slid the chain across, even though I'd never used it before. And that's when the first call came through. Unknown number. I knew before I answered. Because the universe loves choreography. I hit accept. Hello? A woman's voice immediately detonated through the speaker, sharp, shaking with rage. What did you do? I pulled the phone away from my ear and held it like a live wire. Excuse me, I said. This is Marilyn, she snapped. Ryan's mother. And I just got a call from him. My son is in jail because of you. There it was. Not because of the marriage. Not because of the deception. Because of me. Your son is in jail because he married someone else while he was in a committed relationship with me, I said evenly. He was drunk, she cried. It doesn't count. It was Vegas. People do stupid things in Vegas. Stupid things don't require a marriage certificate, I said. And his ex-wife, Jenna, called our apartment asking for bail money, so it seems like it counted to her. There was a pause, like her brain hit a wall and didn't know how to climb over it. Then her tone changed. Not softer, different. She started crying. Please, Marilyn said, voice breaking. Tessa, I'm begging you. He's scared. He's never been in trouble. He's alone in there. This will ruin his life. I leaned against the kitchen counter and shut my eyes. This was the part that was supposed to make me fold. The part where you feel guilty for the consequences of someone else's choices. I didn't feel guilty. I felt tired. Marilyn, I said. He came home and told me he married another woman, like it was something we could just smooth over, like I was supposed to smile and help him fix it. He loves you, she insisted. He came back to you. He came back because he thought I'd still be here, I said. That's not love. That's backup planning. Her breathing turned ragged. Please drop it, please. He'll annul it. He'll apologize. He'll do anything. I opened my eyes and looked at the dining table where Ryan and I had sat just last week, scrolling through apartment listings like we were building something real. I'm not dropping anything, I said. Marilyn made a sound, half sob, half anger, and hung up. 5 minutes later, she called again. Same number, same woman, different approach. Her voice was quieter now, with that trembling softness people use when they think vulnerability is a key. Tessa, she whispered, you're a good girl. I know you are. You don't want to be the kind of woman who ruins a man's future over one bad weekend. My mouth went dry. Good girl. Like I was a dog she could train back into obedience. I'm not ruining his future, I said. He did that when he signed the license. She inhaled sharply. You're being cruel. No, I said, I'm being consistent. And I hung up. I thought that would be it. It wasn't. Sunday morning, my phone lit up again. This time it was a man. I didn't know the number, but I knew the energy before he even spoke. Because anger has a texture. This is Greg Mercer, he said, voice like gravel. Ryan's father. Okay, I said. You vindictive little... He stopped himself, but only barely. Do you have any idea what you've done? Yes, I said. I reported a felony. A felony, he spat, like the word offended him. It was a joke. A Vegas wedding doesn't even count half the time. Then why did he need bail? I asked. Why did Jenna call demanding money? Why are you calling me like your son is the victim of something he chose? Greg's breathing got louder. I should come down there and beat some sense into you. I didn't blink. Cool, I said. That's assault. Want to join him in jail? I can report 2 crimes in 1 weekend. There was silence, not because he calmed down, because bullies hate hearing consequences spoken out loud. He muttered something ugly under his breath and hung up. After that, the calls slowed, but the texts didn't. Kara again. Kara. He said it was a stupid prank. Kara. Tess. Why would you do this? Kara. He's been crying all morning. I stared at the screen until it blurred. Then I set my phone face down and made coffee like my life hadn't just exploded. Because routine was the only thing that still belonged to me. I went through the apartment and picked up the small traces of Ryan that were everywhere. His hoodie on the back of the chair, his sneakers by the closet, the charger he always forgot. Every item felt like a lie. Around noon, I got a message from an unknown Facebook account. No profile picture. Just a name, Jenna Carlisle. My stomach tightened so hard it felt like someone had hooked a string inside me and pulled. The message was short. We need to talk, please. This is a nightmare. I didn't respond. Not yet. Because I didn't know if she was the enemy or another casualty. Then, sometime after 3, the pounding started. Not a polite knock. Not a neighbor. This was fists. I froze, mug halfway to my mouth. The pounding came again, harder, followed by a voice. Tessa, open the door! I set the mug down slowly and walked to the peephole. A woman stood in the hallway, late 20s or early 30s, hair pulled into a messy bun like she'd done it in a hotel bathroom mirror. She wore khaki pants and a white blouse that looked too crisp for a weekend trip. But her face wasn't crisp. Her face was wrecked. Behind her, a man hovered, maybe her friend, maybe someone she'd brought because she didn't want to come alone. The woman leaned close to the door again. Please, I'm not here to fight, her voice cracked. I just need to understand. I didn't have to ask who she was. The universe had already written her introduction. I slid the chain on and opened the door 2 inches. Her eyes snapped to mine like she'd been starving for a face. You're Tessa? She whispered. Yes. She swallowed hard. I'm Jenna. There it was. The name that had lit Ryan's phone like a flare. Jenna's eyes were red, not from pretty crying, from brutal crying. The kind that leaves your eyelids swollen and your throat raw. I didn't know, she said immediately. I swear to God, I didn't know. I held the door chain tight in my fingers like it was a boundary I could touch. You didn't know what? I asked. Her voice wobbled. That he had a girlfriend. That he had... you. Behind her, the man shifted uncomfortably, glancing down the hallway like he wished he could disappear. Jenna took a step closer, hands up. He told me he was single. He told me his last relationship ended 2 years ago. He said he lived alone and he was just done with serious things until I showed up. My throat tightened. Because I could hear Ryan saying those words. I could hear the charm he used on strangers. The soft voice sincerity he used when he wanted something. We celebrated our anniversary in July, I said quietly. Jenna's mouth fell open. No, she whispered. Yes. Her knees actually buckled a little. The man behind her caught her elbow. Oh my God, Jenna breathed. He told me you were a roommate. I felt something in me snap, not into rage, but into clarity so sharp it almost hurt. A roommate, I repeated. Jenna nodded fast, tears spilling again. He said there was a woman he rented with, that she had a crush on him, that she made things uncomfortable. He said he needed to come home and handle logistics before he could come back to Vegas next weekend. Next weekend. My skin went cold. He was planning to come back, I said, more to myself than to her. Jenna nodded, sobbing now. Yes, he said we'd start apartment hunting. He said he wanted to do it right. He said... She choked. He said marrying me was the best decision he ever made. The hallway seemed to tilt, like the building itself couldn't keep balance under the weight of it. I stared at Jenna, and for the first time since Saturday, something inside me moved. Not pity, not forgiveness, just the sick recognition of a pattern. Ryan hadn't stumbled into a mistake. He'd built a bridge between two lives and thought he could run back and forth across it forever. Jenna wiped her cheeks with the heel of her hand. "Where is he?" she asked, voice small. I blinked once, twice. Then I said the truth. "County jail." Jenna's eyes widened in horror. "What? Why?" "Because you can't be married to someone," I said, "when you're in a committed domestic partnership with someone else." Her lips parted. She looked like she might throw up. "I didn't know," she whispered again. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't." The man behind her finally spoke. She's been calling him all morning. He didn't answer. She thought he was ignoring her. Jenna laughed. One sharp, broken sound. "He wasn't ignoring me," she said. "He was getting arrested." She looked at me like she was seeing me clearly now, not as an obstacle, not as an enemy, as the other person he'd used. "I spent so much money," she whispered. "Hotel suite, flights, chapel, rings. I maxed out my credit card. I told my parents I married my college love story." Her voice cracked into humiliation. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt sick, because she was describing the same fantasy Ryan had sold me, just with different packaging. Jenna's eyes sharpened suddenly. "I need to annul this. Like immediately. Am I going to get in trouble?" "No," I said, and it surprised me how steady my voice was. "You didn't know. He did." Jenna pressed her fingers to her mouth and looked down the hallway like she was trying to find air. Then she looked back at me, and there was something new in her expression. Not just grief. Anger. Focused anger. "He played both of us," she said. I didn't answer right away, because admitting it out loud made it real in a way I wasn't ready for. But then I nodded once. "Yes," I said, "he did." Jenna's phone buzzed in her hand. She glanced down, her face twisted. "He's calling," she whispered. My stomach lurched. She stared at the screen like it was a snake. Then she declined the call. And that was the first time since this started that I felt something like control return to the room. Jenna looked up at me again. "What are you going to do?" she asked. I could have said 100 things. That I was done. That I wanted him to suffer. That I wanted my life back. But the truth was simpler than all of it. "I'm going to tell the truth," I said, "and I'm going to let the truth do what it does." Jenna nodded slowly, tears still slipping down her cheeks. "Okay," she whispered. "Then I'll tell it too." And right there, standing in my hallway with a chain on the door and a stranger who technically had the legal title of wife, I realized the next twist wasn't going to be about Ryan's tears. It was going to be about Ryan's lies. Because two women who had never met, who had never owed each other anything, now had the same enemy. And Ryan Mercer had no idea what was coming. Monday morning arrived without ceremony. No dramatic music, no thunder. Just my alarm going off at 6:30 a.m. like my life hadn't detonated over the weekend. I stood in the shower longer than usual, letting hot water pound against my shoulders, trying to wash off the feeling that my skin didn't belong to me anymore. Every memory from the last 4 years felt contaminated, like finding mold behind walls you thought were solid. By 8, I was dressed in jeans and a black sweater, hair pulled back, face neutral. I didn't want to look angry. I didn't want to look broken. I wanted to look factual. Because facts were the only thing keeping this from becoming a screaming match about feelings and forgiveness. The detective had called Sunday night, calm and almost apologetic. "We'll need you to come in Monday morning to give a formal statement," he'd said. "Bring any documentation you have, lease agreements, messages, photos, anything showing the nature of your relationship. Anything showing the nature of my relationship." 4 years reduced to a stack of papers. I arrived at the station with a folder so thick it wouldn't close properly. Joint lease, utility bills, screenshots of texts, Ryan talking about our future, about finally settling down, about how lucky he was to have me. The detective, his name was Alvarez, flipped through it slowly, eyebrows rising higher with each page. "Well," he said dryly, "this is thorough." I gave a tight smile. I didn't plan to need it. He nodded. No one ever does. He asked me to walk him through the weekend again. Vegas, the early return, the confession, the call, the arrest, Jenna's call asking for bail. When I mentioned Jenna coming to my apartment, his expression shifted from professional to openly incredulous. "She showed up?" he asked. "Yes." "And she had no idea about you?" "None," I said. "He told her I was a roommate." Alvarez exhaled through his nose. "That's bold." "That's one word for it." He closed the folder and leaned back. "You understand that people are going to pressure you to drop this." "They already are." He nodded. "That'll get worse." I already knew that. Court was that afternoon. Ryan had been held until then because it was the weekend and there hadn't been a judge available. His parents hadn't managed to scrape together bail fast enough, and part of me, one quiet, ashamed part, was glad. Not because I wanted him to suffer, but because I wanted him to sit with it. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, less dramatic, more fluorescent. Ryan sat at the defense table in an ill-fitting jacket that looked like it had been borrowed from a relative who didn't quite share his proportions. His hair was unstyled. His eyes darted when he saw me walk in. For a split second, something passed over his face. Relief. Like he thought my presence meant forgiveness. I didn't sit near him. I sat in the second row, hands folded, back straight. Jenna was there too, sitting behind him with her own lawyer. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. When our eyes met, she gave me a small nod. Not friendly, not hostile, acknowledging reality. The public defender, young, tired-looking, argued first. Your Honor, she said, my client made a mistake while intoxicated. He did not intend to deceive anyone. Furthermore, he was not legally married to the complainant, and therefore, the prosecutor didn't even let her finish. Intent is not negated by intoxication, she said coolly. And the statute recognizes domestic partnerships when there is a shared residence, financial entanglement, and demonstrated commitment. She held up my lease like it weighed nothing. 4 years. Joint lease. Evidence of ongoing plans to cohabitate permanently. Ryan's head dropped. The judge listened with the expression of someone who'd already made up their mind, but was being polite enough to hear the argument anyway. Bail was set at $15,000. Ryan's mother gasped like she'd been punched. They didn't have that kind of money ready. As the hearing ended, Ryan turned in his seat, twisting around to look at me like I was the last solid thing in a room that had started to spin. Tessa, he whispered, eyes glassy, please, I just need time. I just need to fix this. I didn't answer. I walked past him without stopping. Outside the courthouse, the air felt too sharp, too real. My phone buzzed before I even reached my car. Unknown number. I already knew, I answered. Hello? Tessa? Jenna's voice was tentative. It's me, Jenna. I leaned against my car and closed my eyes. Okay, I said, what's up? I just talked to my lawyer, she said. We're filing for annulment immediately. Fraud, misrepresentation. He lied about everything. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Good, I said. There was a pause, then she added quietly, he called me from jail last night. He asked me to tell you he was sorry. I laughed once. It came out flat. Of course he did. Jenna hesitated. He also asked if you'd consider dropping the charges. There it was. The triangulation. Even now. No, I said. I won't. I didn't think you would, she said. And then, unexpectedly, I don't want you to. I frowned. What? He lied to both of us, she said, her voice steady now. If he doesn't face consequences, he'll just do this again. To someone else. I swallowed. Because hearing someone else say what I'd been thinking felt like permission to believe myself. We stood there in silence for a moment. Two women connected by the same betrayal but moving in the same direction now. Do you want to get coffee? Jenna asked suddenly. Just to talk. No pressure if that's weird. It was weird. It was also the least weird thing that had happened in days. Okay, I said, coffee. We sat in a quiet cafe, a block from the courthouse, both of us staring into our cups, like the answers might float to the surface if we waited long enough. He told me he was planning to move to Vegas, Jenna said eventually. Said he wanted a fresh start, that he was tired of half relationships. I snorted softly. He said the same thing to me, different words. She nodded. I think he wanted both, stability and excitement, and thought he was smart enough to manage it. I thought about the confidence with which Ryan had walked back into my apartment. Not apologetic. Assumptive. He thought I'd accept it, I said quietly. Like love was supposed to be flexible enough to bend around a marriage. Jenna's jaw tightened. He told me you were controlling. Of course he did. That I made him feel trapped, she continued. That marrying me was his way out. I stared at the table. That's going to come up again, I said. She looked at me sharply. What do you mean? In court, I said. They'll try to paint me as the villain. They always do. Jenna nodded slowly. Then I'll tell the truth. I looked up. You don't owe me that. She met my eyes. I owe myself that. When we parted ways, I felt something strange and unfamiliar. Not relief. Alignment. That night, Ryan's mother called again. Different tone, softer, controlled. Tessa, she said carefully, we're trying to figure out bail. We may need a little time. I'm not involved in that, I replied. She cleared her throat. Ryan wanted me to ask if you consider writing a letter about his character to help the judge see he's not a bad person. I almost laughed. Marilyn, I said, bad people don't usually think they're bad. That doesn't make them innocent. She went quiet. Please, she whispered. He's scared. So was I said, when he stood in my living room and told me he married someone else. I hung up before she could respond. Later that night, my phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. Ryan, I never meant to hurt you. This got out of control. Please don't let this define my life. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I turned the phone off. Because what he still didn't understand was this. I wasn't defining his life. I was refusing to let him define mine. And somewhere between the courthouse benches and a lukewarm cup of coffee with the woman he married behind my back, I realized something else too. This wasn't going to end quietly. Ryan wasn't going to accept consequences gracefully. And the next move, when it came, wouldn't be about remorse. It would be about rewriting the story. About turning himself into the victim. And me into the monster. I changed the locks on Tuesday morning. Not out of spite. Out of instinct. Because once someone proves they can rewrite reality to suit themselves, you stop assuming they'll respect boundaries just because you asked nicely. The locksmith didn't ask questions. He just drilled, replaced, tested. 15 minutes, and the life Ryan had walked out of was officially sealed off. I installed security cameras that afternoon. Front door, hallway, living room. I hated that I felt the need to, but I hated even more how obvious it felt. Wednesday came and went without incident. No calls, no texts. I almost let myself believe the worst part was over. Thursday morning proved me wrong. I was working from home when my phone buzzed. Motion alert. Front door. I opened the camera feed and felt my stomach drop. Ryan stood there with his father. Greg Mercer looked exactly like he sounded on the phone. Tight jaw, red face, fury vibrating off him like heat. Ryan tried his key. It didn't work. He tried again. Still nothing. Greg stepped forward and pounded on the door with the flat of his hand. "Open up," he shouted. "She needs to get her things." She. Like I was already erased from my own home. I didn't open the door. I spoke through it instead, my voice steady even though my pulse was loud in my ears. "She can schedule a pickup with a police escort. I'm not letting her in otherwise." Ryan's head snapped up toward the door. "Tessa, please, I just need my laptop and clothes. You're being ridiculous." "You forfeited casual access when you committed a felony," I said. Greg exploded. "You think you're clever," he yelled. "You think this makes you powerful? You're abusing the system. You're punishing my son because you're bitter." I leaned against the door, palms flat against the wood. "I'm protecting myself," I said, "and documenting everything." Greg stepped closer to the camera, pointing like he could reach through the lens. "You're going to regret this," he snarled. I said nothing. Eventually, after more shouting, more threats, more promises of lawyers, they left. My hands shook afterward. Not because I was unsure, because confrontation always leaves residue, even when you're right. That afternoon, the calls started, not just from Ryan's parents, from his aunts, his cousins, family friends I'd met once at holidays and never spoken to again. Voicemails stacked up like accusations. "You've gone too far. He made a mistake. You're destroying a good man. You'll regret this when you calm down." Then came the messages that crossed the line. Texts calling me controlling, manipulative, abusive. One voicemail from an unknown woman said, "Any woman who calls the cops on her boyfriend is dangerous." That night, Jenna messaged me. "Jenna, you need to see this." She sent screenshots, dozens of them. Ryan had been messaging her for 3 months before Vegas. Not casual catching up. An emotional affair with a plan. I feel stuck. I love her, but I'm not in love. I need to figure out how to leave without losing the apartment. Maybe I can stay until we're set up together. My vision blurred. Because suddenly the Vegas wedding wasn't impulsive. It was a milestone. Jenna sent another message. "Jenna, he told me the drunk mistake story was the safest way to come home to you." Safest. I sat there in my living room, cameras blinking quietly, locks newly turned, realizing the truth was uglier than betrayal. He hadn't wanted to choose. He wanted overlap, security, and passion. And when it collapsed, he didn't panic because he'd hurt me. He panicked because he'd lost control of the narrative. The annulment hearing was Monday. It lasted less than 10 minutes. The judge barely looked up from the paperwork. "Fraud," she said flatly. "Misrepresentation. Annulment granted." Ryan wasn't there. His lawyer was. Jenna sat beside me, jaw clenched, hands folded so tightly her knuckles were white. When we walked out, she exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. "I feel stupid," she said quietly. "You shouldn't," I replied. "He rehearsed this." She nodded. "So did he with you." Tuesday was the preliminary hearing for the criminal charges. This was where Ryan's defense tried something new. They claimed I was controlling, that our relationship was coercive, that Ryan married Jenna as an escape attempt. I sat there listening to a stranger describe me as isolating, emotionally abusive, financially manipulative. They said I forced him into the lease, that I trapped him, that Vegas was his cry for help. My lawyer stood up calmly and dismantled it piece by piece. Bank records, separate finances, texts, him suggesting the joint lease, social media, posts from days before Vegas about how blessed he was, witness statements from my friends, my family, even my ex, stating I was never controlling. Then Jenna's screenshots, the planning, the strategy, the lies. The judge looked exhausted. "Counselor," she said, "your client knowingly entered into a second marriage while maintaining an active domestic partnership. Evidence shows months of planning, not escape. Trial is set for January." Ryan didn't look at me. He stared at the table like it might open up and swallow him whole. Outside the courthouse, Jenna and I stood in the cold air, neither of us sure what to say. "Coffee?" she asked again, almost wry. I nodded. We weren't friends, but we were witnesses, and that mattered more. Later that night, my phone buzzed. A message from Ryan's number. A photo. A handwritten letter. 4 pages. Apologies, love, therapy, fear. "I'll do anything. Please don't let me go to prison. We can start over." I felt nothing reading it. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Just a hollow quiet where hope used to be. I forwarded it to my lawyer. She replied within minutes. "Do not respond. This may constitute witness tampering." I turned off my phone and sat alone in the apartment, cameras humming softly, lock solid, truth finally loud enough to be heard. Because the story they were trying to sell was simple. Villain girlfriend. Poor trapped man. But the receipts told a different one. And in January, that story would be told under oath. The begging didn't start loudly. It started politely. A new number called on Thursday afternoon while I was at my desk, laptop open, pretending to care about a spreadsheet that refused to hold my attention. I let it ring. Then it rang again. And again. Finally, I answered, because avoidance only feeds people who believe persistence is power. "Tessa," a man's voice said softly. "It's Greg." Ryan's father. Gone was the gravel. Gone was the threat. This version sounded tired. "I'm listening," I said, keeping my voice neutral. He exhaled. "Look, I know things got heated before. I shouldn't have said what I said. I'm sorry." I said nothing. He took that as encouragement. "We're all under a lot of stress," he continued. "Ryan's not sleeping. He's barely eating. He's terrified about the trial." "That's not my responsibility," I replied. "I know," he said quickly. "I know, but he's our son, and this is going to destroy him." I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. This was the pivot. The moment where anger turned into bargaining. "What are you asking for?" I said. A pause, then, "Would you consider dropping the charges?" There it was. Clean, simple, unreal. "No," I said. He swallowed audibly. "What if he apologizes, properly? What if he pays you back for what?" I asked. "He didn't steal money. He stole 4 years and tried to steal my reality. There's no refund for that." Greg's voice tightened. "You're really going to ruin his life over this." I felt something stir in my chest. Not rage, not sadness. Certainty. "He ruined his own life," I said. "I reported the crime." "You're heartless," he snapped, frustration cracking through. "No," I said. "I'm consistent." He hung up. 2 days later, the letter arrived. Handwritten. 4 pages. I recognized Ryan's handwriting immediately, slanted slightly right, careful, like he'd always wanted to be seen as thoughtful. I sat at the kitchen table with the envelope in my hands for a long time before opening it, not because I was afraid of what it would say, because I was afraid it would still work. It didn't. The letter was exactly what you'd expect from a man trying to outrun consequences. He loved me. He always had. Vegas was a mistake. He was confused. He was starting therapy. He was working on himself. He wrote about fear, about prison, about his future being over, about how we could start fresh if I just gave him the chance. "I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I'll do anything. Please don't let this end everything." I read it twice. Then I felt nothing. No surge of power. No triumph. Just a quiet emptiness where grief had burned itself out. I texted my lawyer. Me. He sent a handwritten letter asking me to drop the charges. Her. Do not respond. Forward it to me immediately. I did. 5 minutes later, she called. "This may be considered witness tampering," she said, "depending on how the judge sees it." I closed my eyes. So trying to apologize might actually make it worse for him. "Yes," she replied. "That's not on you." I didn't argue. Because for the first time since this began, I wasn't tempted to soften the blow. I was done absorbing his fallout. Jenna called that night. "I talked to my lawyer," she said. "We're filing for reimbursement, wedding costs, fraud claim." "Good," I said. She hesitated. My parents are furious. They want him held accountable. I thought about Ryan's parents, their shifting tones, their desperate bargaining. They should, I replied. We talked for a while about logistics, about therapy appointments, about the weird limbo of waiting for a trial date while your life keeps demanding normalcy. When I hung up, the apartment felt too small, too full of ghosts. I started packing that weekend. Not to move yet, but to remind myself I could. Every box I filled felt like reclaiming a square inch of my future. On Sunday night, my phone buzzed again. A new message, from a number I didn't recognize. Ryan, I'm begging you, please, I can't go to prison. I stared at the screen until it dimmed. Then I blocked the number. Monday morning, my therapist asked me how I felt. Empty, I said honestly. She nodded. That's normal. You've been in survival mode. The grief comes later. I thought about that, about how grief wasn't loud for me. It was quiet. It was realizing I didn't miss him. I missed who I thought he was. By midweek, word started spreading. Mutual friends stopped texting. Some unfollowed me. Others watched my stories without interacting. Curious, but unwilling to choose a side. I didn't chase explanations. Because anyone who thought I should have accepted a secret marriage as a mistake wasn't someone I needed in my life. Friday afternoon, my lawyer emailed. Trial date confirmed, January 14th. I closed my laptop and sat back in my chair. January. A finish line. Not to revenge, to closure. That night, I stood in my living room, lights low, boxes stacked against one wall, and tried to imagine what my life would look like after this chapter closed. Quieter, smaller, safer. And for the first time since Ryan walked back into my apartment with that rehearsed calm, I felt something like relief. Because whatever happened in court, one truth was already settled. I would never again be someone's backup plan. January arrived the way winter always does. Quiet, unapologetic, impossible to argue with. The trial lasted 2 days. 2 days of sitting in a wooden chair that creaked every time I shifted, listening to strangers dissect my life like it was a case study instead of something I'd lived inside for 4 years. Ryan sat at the defense table, thinner than I remembered. His hair was cut too short. His suit didn't quite fit. Every time our eyes almost met, he looked away. Good. Day 1 was testimony. I went first. Sworn in, seated, asked to tell the story from the beginning. I didn't editorialize. I didn't cry. I didn't perform. I spoke in facts. 4 years together. Joint lease. Plans to move forward. The Vegas trip. The confession. The call to police. The arrest in my kitchen. The defense tried to poke holes. Did he ever hit you? No. Did he ever threaten you? No. Did he ever restrict your finances? No. So when you say controlling, that's just how you felt. I met the attorney's eyes calmly. I never said he was controlling, I replied. He did. That shut the room up. The prosecution followed with evidence. Screenshots. Dates. Messages between Ryan and Jenna. 3 months of planning, positioning, strategizing. Then Jenna testified. Her voice shook at first, then steadied. She explained how Ryan told her he was single, how he called me a roommate, how he promised a future, how he said the Vegas wedding was finally choosing passion. The jury watched him carefully as she spoke, not with sympathy, with recognition. Day 2 brought closing arguments. The defense tried one last time to sell the story. A confused man, a toxic relationship, a bad decision fueled by alcohol. The prosecutor stood and dismantled it calmly. Alcohol doesn't write 3 months of messages, she said. Fear doesn't post a smiling photo with a marriage certificate. And confusion doesn't come home expecting 2 women to accept the same lie. The jury left. 3 hours later, they returned. I held my breath, not because I doubted the evidence, but because finality is always heavier than anticipation. Guilty, the foreperson said. Bigamy in the 3rd degree. Ryan closed his eyes. His mother sobbed. His father stared at me like he wanted to burn my face into memory. Sentencing happened the next day. No jail time. 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service, $5,000 fine, mandatory counseling. His lawyer argued he'd already suffered enough. Public humiliation, job loss. The judge didn't disagree, but she didn't absolve him either. This court finds that your actions were deliberate, she said evenly, and consequences are appropriate. Outside the courthouse, Ryan's best friend tried to confront me. Happy now? She snapped. You destroyed his life. I looked at her, feeling nothing but tired. He destroyed his life when he decided the truth was optional, I said. I just refused to lie for him. She called me a name I didn't repeat. Then she walked away. That week I moved. New apartment. Smaller. Across town. Month-to-month lease. Just me. No shared keys, no shared assumptions. I unpacked slowly, deliberately. Bought a new couch, new sheets, new routines. I started therapy twice a week. Because even when you do everything right, betrayal leaves fingerprints on your nervous system. Jenna texted me a few weeks later. Settlement went through. He's paying back $4,200. My parents made him settle. I smiled for her. Not because of the money, because accountability had followed him all the way through. Ryan's parents mailed me an invoice for his legal fees. $8,000. I mailed it back with no written across the top. Never heard from them again. Life didn't become magical. It became quiet. I worked. I cooked. I went on a few dates and realized I wasn't ready. I flinched when people mentioned exes. I noticed how easily trust fractures. And I respected myself for noticing. One night, my therapist asked if I had any regrets. I thought about Ryan standing in my living room saying, "I married someone else, but I love you." About how confidently he'd expected me to accept that. "No," I said, "I don't." That doesn't make me cruel. It makes me honest. Some people think I went too far calling the police, that I should have just broken up and moved on. But here's the thing. He didn't just hurt my feelings. He committed a crime and assumed love would protect him from consequences. I didn't punish him. I reported the truth, and the truth did the rest. Ryan is living with his parents now, working retail, paying fines, rebuilding from scratch. I'm living alone, drinking coffee on a couch I chose, sleeping without wondering what I'm not being told. I lost 4 years, but I kept myself. And I learned something I'll never forget. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And when they ask you to help them escape the consequences of their choices, you're allowed to say no.